All right, good afternoon. In a short while, I will be joined by Ambassador Munir Akram, the permanent representative of Pakistan, who is here in his capacity as president of the Economic and Social Council. In the meantime, a few things for you. This morning, the Secretary General spoke at the World Food Programme's Executive Board. He once again congratulated the colleagues on their Nobel Peace Prize, adding that he witnessed their commitment to deliver life-saving assistance in the most remote locations, in the most dangerous situations, and the most challenging contexts. The Secretary General added that he could never have imagined that hunger would rise again during his time in office as Secretary General. However, according to WFP figures, 130 million people risk being pushed to the brink of starvation by the end of the year. This is totally unacceptable, Mr. Guterres said. COVID-19 recovery must address inequalities and fragilities, and the questions of food will be central to a sustainable and inclusive recovery. Turning to climate, the Secretary General added that he believes that food systems will be essential to bringing up to net zero, adding in this regard the work of WFP is also essential. His full remarks are available. Also this morning, the Secretary General participated at the third annual Bloomberg New Economy Forum. He said that the UN has been working to save lives, control transmissions of the virus, and ease the fallout. He added that we are advocating a massive rescue package for the world's most vulnerable peoples and country. The Secretary General said that even before the spread of the virus, inequalities was rising, societal divisions were widening, and a lack of opportunities was causing frustration and unrest. He stressed that we must address these issues. He also noted that we may have a potential potential running point on climate change, with more countries pledging to be carbon neutral by 2050. He emphasized that carbon should be given a price that countries need to phase out. Coal. 2021 must be the year of great leap forward. Carbon neutrality, he said, adding that we recover from the pandemic, we must have an opening to addressing the climate crisis. And the Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, is concluding her visit to Ghana today, where she had a series of meetings with authorities, development partners, UN colleagues, and civil society organizations. This morning, she visited the National Peace Council, which continues to play a positive role in promoting a culture of peace in the country. Later, she visited the UN hospital and a clinic supported by the UN to strengthen the government's COVID-19 response, as well as the continuity of essential health services, particularly for women and children. Yesterday evening, Amina Mohammed met with the President of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, as well as key ministers. She took part in the presentation of the COVID-19 UN Socioeconomic Recovery Plan. And over the weekend, she was in Sierra Leone, where she met with the President, Vice President, and other key government officials. There, too, she took part in the presentation of the COVID-19 UN Socioeconomic Recovery Plan for Sierra Leone. And she also visited a country where massive mudslides, an area of the country where massive mudslides left over 1,100 people missing, 6,000 people displaced in 2017. Since then, the UN has supported efforts to stabilize the slope from further slippage, and she also met with a group of women working to bring solar power to communities in a country. And she will be returning to Nigeria later today, which will be the last leg of her solidarity trip to West Africa. And turning to Ethiopia, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that they are alarmed by the escalating conflict in the north. There have been reports of rocket attacks as the Amhara region, as well as in Eritrea. There's also a reported airstrike in the vicinity of Mekele, the main city in Tigray region. Our humanitarian colleagues repeat their call to all parties to the conflict to de-escalate to avoid further casualties and the suffering of civilians. According to unconfirmed reports, there's a massive internal displacement from western to northern Tigray. More than 25,000 Ethiopians have crossed into Sudan so far. And we are also equally alarmed by the increasing insecurity in western and southern Oromia province, as well as in eastern Benishangul and Gumuz regions. The protection of civilians and the adherence to international humanitarian law must be enforced as a priority by all parties, In addition, we call for humanitarian access, the resumption of telecommunications, and basic supplies, including food, medicine, and fuel for citizens in the Tigray region. And a quick note from the Philippines, where humanitarian colleagues tell us that 67 people have lost their lives, 21 people have reported injured, and 13 are missing following Typhoon Vamco, which hit the main island of Luzon late last week. Rescue operations are ongoing as floodwaters recede, with at least 50 villages remaining isolated. In Isabela and Cagayan provinces, at least 1.1 million people were impacted by flooding, and in Manila, tens of thousands of suburban homes were submerged. This is the worst flooding in that region for decades. The resident coordinator and humanitarian coordinator, Gustavo Gonzalez, has expressed his condolences to the government and conveyed the readiness of the humanitarian community to provide support. And the Secretary General joins the resident coordinator in expressing his condolences to the people of the Philippines for their losses. And in Central America, people are bracing for another potentially catastrophic storm, that storm named Iota, just 2 weeks after Hurricane Eta made landfall in a region causing death and destruction. Ahead of Iota, we, along with our regional and national partners, are building along preparedness and response work that was already underway for ETA, including pre-positioning of supplies. Meanwhile, in response to ETA, 7 members of the UN Disaster Assessment Coordination Team were deployed on Saturday to Honduras. The team will assist authorities and the UN country team in needs assessment, coordination, logistics, information management, and will remain in the country through November. And just staying in that region, I have been asked about Peru, and I can tell you that the Secretary General is following with concern recent developments in Peru. He urges all stakeholders to work towards a prompt and institutional solution in the current political crisis and challenges facing the country through inclusive dialogue with full respect for the law. The Secretary General is deeply disturbed by reports of excessive use of force and violence allegedly committed by security forces during the protests, including the death of 2 young men, dozens of injuries, and attacks against media workers. He extends his condolences to the families of the victims and trusts that the authorities will conduct an impartial and independent investigation into these events. This is what happens when you start on time. And this morning here, the Undersecretary General for Peace Operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, briefed the Security Council during a session on the G5 Sahel, and he did so by video conference. He said that despite the COVID-19 pandemic, counterterrorism efforts in the Sahel have intensified. Mr. Lacroix welcomed the increased coordination of security players on the ground, adding that this has allowed for more visible presence of defense and security forces, as well as stepped-up measures on terrorist groups. Mr. Lacroix reiterated the importance of more predictable funding, saying that we should be mindful of the disastrous implications of the security situation for the rest of West Africa region if the Sahel is not adequately addressed. His remarks have been shared with you. Also, just for you to note, if you haven't noted, that Nikolai Mladenov, the special coordinator for the UN Middle East peace process, said today he was very concerned by the decision of the Israeli authorities to open bidding process for the construction of Givat Hamatos. If built, he warned this would further consolidate the ring of settlements between Jerusalem and Bethlehem in the occupied West Bank. He added that it would be significantly damage the prospect for future contiguous Palestinian state for achieving a negotiated two-state solution based on the 1967 lines, with Jerusalem as the capital of both states. Mr. Mladenov reiterated that settlement construction is illegal under international law and called on the authorities to reverse this step. Just for you to note that over the weekend, the Secretary General spoke at the A.S.E.A.N UN summit, and we distributed those remarks. He said that as we mark the 75th anniversary of the UN, the international community is facing a perfect storm of pandemic, climate emergency, rising geopolitical tension, among many others. And he commended ASEAN for its commitment to international cooperation, regional stability, as well as for recognition of that any COVID-19 must be a global public good. Those remarks have been shared with you. And in case you were wondering, today is the International Day of Tolerance. So be kind. The UN is committed to strengthening tolerance by fostering mutual understanding among cultures and peoples. In a tweet, the Secretary General made a call that on this day and every day, we should all advance human dignity, fight racism, forge peace, adding that this is a firm belief that he can help solve our biggest challenges by embracing diversity and respecting each other. So I will go to your questions. Iftikhar.
Thanks, Steph. You read about the situation in Ethiopia. The situation has taken the turn for the worse and even spreading into third countries. Has the Secretary General renewed its contacts with the leaders of the region to bring about an easing of tensions?
Yes, the Secretary General has been making a number of calls over the weekend. His envoy for the Horn of Africa also remains in the region. He's obviously following the developments in Tigray and the impact that they can have for the wider region with great concern. I think we've talked often about the risk of destabilizing the whole of the Horn of Africa. For him, it is very important to stress the need to prioritize human rights, the protection of civilians, and access for humanitarian assistance. I think, as I've just said, we are facing a bit of a black hole in terms of what is actually going on. It is important that urgently measures to de-escalate tensions and be put in place, and he underlines the importance of peace in ensuring a stable and prosperous Horn of Africa.
One more. How is Mr. Lekwa doing after his...
Mr.? Oh, he's well. He's remains in I don't want to say splendid isolation, but in quarantine in Lisbon. But I've been in touch with him, and as far as I know, there are no symptoms, and he's in good spirits and good enough spirits to brief the Security Council. Apostolis, and then we'll go to you, James.
Hi, Stéphane. Yesterday, in spite of pleas by the Secretary General of the Security Council on Varosha, Turkish President Erdogan went for a picnic in the fenced area. Is the Secretary General intending to do something more drastic this time? And since he openly supported a two-state solution for Cyprus, is this altering Secretary General's plans to send Mrs. Lut to the island for a new exploratory initiative?
Look, I don't have anything to share with you on Ms. Lut's potential travel. We've obviously been following what's been going on over the weekend in Varosha very closely, and I would say with concern. Our position on Varosha remains unchanged, and we're guided by the relevant Security Council resolutions that as we've often said. I think it is important, and the Secretary General calls on all parties to avoid any unilateral actions that could trigger tensions on the island, and that would potentially undermine a return to dialogue for the future success of talks. We call again on the parties to engage in dialogue in order to resolve their differences. We believe it is important to resume a viable and comprehensive negotiation process and remain committed to supporting the two sides in revitalizing the political process. And we reiterate our readiness to explore possibility of convening an informal 5+ UN meeting at an appropriate stage. But, ultimately, the means for a durable solution in Cyprus are in the hands of the parties. Mr. Bays.
Stéphane,
yes.
one more, if I may.
Yeah.
Since Mr. Erdogan speaks now for a two-state solution, and the Secretary General in his reports, he's speaking about his 6 points at Grand Montana, on which basis the new effort is going to start?
Well, the Secretary General's positions remains unchanged. You've laid it out yourself, quoting the various Security Council, various reports to the Security Council. So our position unchanged. We will leave you to do the compare and contrast. Mr. Bays.
First, another vaccine, it seems, for COVID-19. The Secretary-General's reaction?
Look, these are all very positive developments. Obviously, they all need to be adequately vetted through the medical procedures, which we understand they are. But it is also a reminder of the need to treat these vaccines as a global public good.
Moving on to Libya, thank you for the briefing that we had on Friday afternoon with the acting special representative, Stephanie Williams, who confirmed that the monitoring mechanism in Libya would be under a UN umbrella. So a couple of questions on that. First, who is carrying out the effort? Who's in charge of the effort of trying to recruit these monitors? Is it happening within UNSMIL, or are there people in this building working on it?
Let me just say, I'm not going to go any further than what she said. If I can get more details, I will, but I won't go any further than what she said to her on Friday.
Okay, well, with regard to a monitoring mechanism, which now she has said will be under a UN umbrella, one assumes that needs a new mandate from the Security Council. Can you confirm that? And what is if that is the case, what is the Secretary General's message to the Security Council?
Well, the message to the Security Council is support our efforts, support the Libyan people, support the process that is underway in a strong and united voice. And also a reminder to reiterate our call for the respect of the embargoes on Libya, the arms embargo. Ms. Williams is scheduled to speak to the Council later this week, if I'm not mistaken, so I expect she will update the Council then. Nick. Go ahead. Toby, I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm calling you Nick, Toby, or Toby, Nick, whatever. You know who you are, even if I'm not sure who you are. But yes, go ahead, Toby.
I'll be Nick for today.
Yeah.
My question is, the virus, we have a lot of good news about potential vaccines at the moment. It's true. But the virus is surging globally and surging here in the U.S. in particular. And I'm wondering, how concerned is the Secretary General over these numbers and what this pandemic is doing at the moment?
Well, the Secretary General is like all of us. He's very concerned about rising numbers wherever we see them. And it is a reminder for people to tackle the virus with policies that are tethered to reality and that are based on science. And while obviously, I think as you point out, the vaccine, all these vaccines are very good news, there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of containing the spread of the virus every day, today and every day. Philippe from AFP, and then we'll go to Maria.
Hello, Stéphane. Sorry if I missed that, but can you confirm on the Western Sahara exchange of fire between the two parties?
What I can tell you is that the mission, MINURSO, has received reports by both parties of incidents of shooting at nighttime in their territory at various locations along the berm. The mission continues to urge the parties to exercise restraint and take all necessary steps to diffuse tensions. And our colleagues on the ground in Western Sahara are continuing to monitor the situation very closely. Okay, Maria? Vas-y, go ahead, Philippe. Sorry.
No, just to tell you that it would be nice if we can have a contact also with MINURSO. I mean, even for journalists in Morocco, because it's very difficult to have information from them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Registered. Maria Krenova. No, you're muted, Maria.
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead. Try it again.
Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay, good. Hi again, everyone. So a follow-up on Ethiopia. Yeah, I just wonder if you have any numbers of casualties. And another question on Moldova, where presidential elections were held and luckily without any civil unrest so far, so I wonder if SG has a comment on that.
Okay, I heard Moldova, if that's correct. I don't have any comment on.
It's not that good as I expected.
Okay, you're breaking up. I don't have anything on Moldova. On Ethiopia, obviously we're very concerned about the reports of casualties, of high casualties among civilians and target attacks among civilians. As I said, part of the issue is the lack of communication with the area. We are continuing to see an outflow of people from Ethiopia, from Tigray province into Sudan. There have been more than 20,000, according to my colleagues at UNHCR, that have crossed the border. Plus, we're obviously concerned about the plight of the Eritrean refugees who are already in Ethiopia. There's almost 96,000 of them. And there were also internally displaced people in Tigray. There's a risk of this becoming a grave humanitarian crisis. Did you have another question? Okay, we'll leave it at that.
Moldova, but you said you don't have.
Okay, excellent. Okay, Dulcie asked about Amir Mohammed. We will ask her to come in brief after she comes back. Gloria, quick question, then we'll go to our guest.
I think one of the few people who followed Cyprus questions, and even I visited North and South Cyprus, and I could be incorrect, but are there talks at least on tourism between the two countries, an investment and agreed upon repairs to both sides? Because on both sides, the real estate is rotting where there are questions of ownership. And the people on the islands are ready and willing to follow any accord to be able to invest, unload, or somehow solve these financial problems, which would help both sides of the island.
All right. Well, these are issues I think they're very much front and foremost on the minds of those who are trying to move the process forward. Okay, I will we'll bring in our guest, and I'll be back in 2 seconds.